Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya here, and November 23 is going to be a big day in Norman, and that is because the Alabama Crimson Tide are coming to town. Charlie Potter from Bama Online joining us now to kind of get to know the Tide. I'm sure that there's a lot of people, especially watching this, they're well familiar with Alabama and the power that is, but I can't imagine this is, I guess, been a usual offseason for Alabama. Obviously, with the news that comes out, Nick Saban out. He will not be making the trip with the Crimson Tide when they come to Norman. Kalen DeBoer now in. What is this, I guess, last couple months been like during a, I wouldn't say tumultuous offseason, but a certainly interesting offseason in Tuscaloosa?
It's been different for sure. Under Nick Saban, you can kind of set your watch to an off season to know what to expect.
Right.
And so he retired on January 10th. And probably for the next 4 months, it was just nuts. And then it didn't help, and not in a negative way, but then the basketball team decided to make a Final Four run too. So just to add to the stuff to do. But no, I mean, Greg Byrne moved quickly, hiring Caleb DeBoer on January 12th. So less than 72 hours, which was kind of his promise to the team. And he's hit the ground running, man. Hired a decent staff, has retained a lot of the roster. They've recruited well. They've hit the portal, and it's been different to kind of cover him because you're used to a head coach that's, you got to be careful how you word a question, and you could literally probably ask Kalen DeBoer anything, and he's answering it with a smile. So it's been a good transition. Obviously, we'll see what happens in the fall whenever they get on the field, but so far it's been a really good offseason for Alabama. It's been different, but it's been good.
I was just going to ask, what is different about Kalen versus Nick Saban? I'm sure there's a lot of things, but what's been maybe the biggest difference, whether you noticed it during spring practice or the summer, maybe recruiting and the way that this coaching staff has approached that? What have been some of the biggest differences that you've seen?
Yeah, I think he's more open. He's more relaxed. Whenever we have media opportunities, he likes to do them kind of more informal, kind of like a scrum. He'll be in front of the backdrop, just kind of gather around him. That man's done countless interviews and with anybody. And I mean, that's coming back from his NAIA days with he's trying to help out the little guy. He still has that in him. I think too, going out to practice, which was new for us. We hadn't been to a Alabama practice that's not kind of mandated by a bowl game since the preseason of 2021. So they had the entire 2020 season with no practice, won a national championship during the COVID year. I think we had two or three preseason practices and Saban cut it. So getting back out to practice was nice, and they had music playing. It's just more laid back, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. I mean, Nick Saban was to the point. It was very businesslike. I still think those elements are there, but you can tell there's a different head coach in charge, and he lets his assistants talk. It's just more open. Access will be interesting to see how that goes in the fall. I think preseason camp will probably be similar to the spring, but so far, yeah, from a reporter standpoint, it's been a lot of fun to cover because it's been a change and one that we feel kind of welcome in the building again.
I think we can kind of relate
Yes.
to the idea of not going to practices, and then they're like, okay, you guys can come in, and then once you get a taste, it's like, I don't know if we need to be here every day, but as
Right,
much
right.
as much turnover as there has been with Alabama, there is a bunch of constant, obviously, and that starts with the quarterback position. Jalen Milroe going into another year in which he had his ups and downs. I think it's probably a storyline going into this season as far as what he was able to turn that thing around, and they end up in the college football playoff, but. Just in terms of his leadership, everything around the offense now for Alabama going into this season.
Yeah, I think it's a big year for Jalen. And I think he's really attacked the offseason. And he's a guy that knows he has to improve. He has things to clean up. He's a dynamic athlete. He's one who will tell you, too, he doesn't really work on his running ability. That's just kind of God given. But he's really focused on developing and progressing as a passer. And I think with Kalen DeBoer coming in, Nick Sheridan as offense coordinator, there's points of emphasis that they've placed on him that, hey, this is where we need to get better. This is where you can go as a player. And I'm really fascinated to see what he's going to look like in this offense because I think he can take those steps. And if they can get him to maybe not be so much as of wanting to be a home run hitter every play and holding on to the ball too long, that in and of itself will help this offense. Because last year, Alabama gave up, I think, 49 sacks. All of those obviously aren't on the quarterback. The offensive line needs to get better too. But if Jalen would have gotten rid of the ball or maybe just tuck it and ran a few times, you can eliminate some of those. And so I think decision making is going to be big for him. But he's worked with his wide receivers. He worked with a bunch of different people this offseason. And I think having an offensive minded head coach that has pumped him with confidence and belief this offseason is going to be big for him. It's going to be big going into the year, knowing he's the guy, because last year, heck, even going into that South Florida game, we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be after that game. I think it became clear after that kind of bad game for Alabama played out, but it's a situation where I think he is confident and the people around him are confident in him. Not that Nick Saban and the staff weren't, but it's kind of that way from day one. And I think if he can continue to progress and improve on the things that he knows he needs to get better at, Jalen could be right there in that Heisman conversation like he was a year ago. He'll be higher up, maybe even get an invite to New York.
Charlie, tell us about this defense, because for forever it felt like under Nick Saban that was the identity of this program, is Alabama was going to play great defense. And in recent years, you saw the offense get more explosive with different coordinators like Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian and those sorts of things. But what is the mentality on that side of the ball? Like you said, Kalen DeBoer is an offensive-minded head coach. You saw what he did with Michael Penix last year, and I think a lot of people believe Jalen Milroe can be really special this year. But what's the feeling on the defensive side of the ball with the new staff over there too?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are interested to see. I think they're fascinated to see the offense and how it's different and how, Jalen Milroe and some of these playmakers, what they can do. But you bring in Kane Wommack, head coach from South Alabama, to be a defensive coordinator. He's had some meetings with Nick Saban about what he wants to do and the personnel he's kind of inheriting. But he has a 4-2-5 defense. He calls it the Swarm D, and that's really just kind of keeping the ball in front of you and swarming to the football. That's kind of the layman's terms of it. But it's going to be similar. There's a little bit of differences because you basically have two down linemen. You have a bandit, which is your kind of strong side defensive end, leaner lineman, and you have your outside backers, your wolf. That's your front four. You got your two inside backers off the ball, two safeties, two corners, and then they have the Husky position, which is the kind of a slot defender. And that's what, I mean, Alabama had the star forever under Nick Saban. That's what Minka Fitzpatrick was, guys like him. They have a ton of those guys, but it's going to be another key piece of the defense. So there's different terminology, but it's going to be similar. And they're strong up the middle. I think their defensive line is one of the deepest positions on the position groups on the team. They welcome back two inside linebackers who are really good. I think all SEC caliber players in Deontay Lawson and Jod Campbell. And then you get Malachi Moore back as a fifth-year player who started for 40 years, and you add Keon Sabb out of the transfer portal from Michigan. The up the gut of that defense is really strong. Where I have questions is on the boundary, losing Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry at corner. I'm interested to see what's going to happen at that Husky slot position. And then those ends, because it's a little different than what we're used to. And then they have to replace Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell from last year's team. So I think the strength is obvious, but I don't think the weaknesses are as glaring as some make them out to be. I think the back end is a big question mark because you lost both those corners. You lost Caleb Downs to the transfer portal, which is a huge loss. You had so many of those DBs leave after Nick Saban retired that depth is going to be an issue there. But if they can stay healthy and some of their guys that have been in the program, some of the guys they brought in, whether they're high school players or from the transfer portal, if they can step up, they've got the talent. It's just, they're gonna need to step up quickly because they've got 3 games, the third being a trip to Wisconsin, and the fourth game's Georgia. So they're gonna have to grow up quickly.
I was going to ask you, and I think I probably know this coming from the Oklahoma side of things and familiar with the passionate fan base, but I would imagine a grace period won't be given to Kalen DeBoer and this new staff as they ease in. And as you said, you look up and all of a sudden the schedule, third and fourth game is going to be tested quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if Alabama loses to Georgia in
Sure.
what is that, I guess week 5 because they have the bye week, I don't think the fan base is going to lose their minds. I think it's how they respond to that. After Georgia, they get a game at Vandy, they get South Carolina at home, and then really what I think is the meat of the schedule. You get a road trip to Tennessee, you get Missouri at home, you get your second bye week, and then you get a road trip to LSU. I think that's where we'll probably learn the most about this football team because after LSU, you get the Mercer game and then the trip to Norman, which I think a lot of people are interested in. But I don't think that Georgia game is going to be the defining moment of the season. I think if they win that game, it could be. then expectations are just sky high. Alabama fans are going to be like, well, let's get back to the national championship game. But no, I think, beating Georgia at home is going to be, it's going to be tough. I mean, Texas came into Alabama last year and won that game. So it's, it's going to be fascinating to see how they navigate the schedule because it is manageable. It's not like what Florida has to go through or something like that. But it's a situation where it kind of it spaces out nicely, but those first three games, you got Western Kentucky at home, South Florida at home, a road trip to Wisconsin, which I think is going to be kind of an underrated game on the schedule. But then, right at the end of September, you get Georgia at home. So we'll learn a lot early, but I think we'll learn the most in the middle of the season. I do think, though, 8-4, people are going to be pretty pissed. So I think, anything less than probably 10 games, Alabama fans
Sure.
are not happy.
Yeah, I don't think, despite a coaching change, I think the expectations, just like at Oklahoma, the expectations are always extremely high every year. I did want to ask you about OU, though. What is just, I guess, the sense from the Alabama, whether it's the football program or I know that you're on the message boards and the fans, what is just, I guess, their overall thoughts on Oklahoma and I guess Texas joining the league?
Yeah, I mean, Alabama's familiar with Texas now,
Yeah.
having played them the last two seasons with a home and home before the merger. I think they're excited. I think that it's clear that it boosts the SEC in a positive way. It also is not you're not bringing in a team from the Pacific Northwest. It makes sense geographically to add those teams. So I think they're excited. I think fans are excited to make that trip too because it's different. I mean, I know I'm looking forward to trips to Wisconsin and Norman because I've never been there. And Norman would be the last SEC stadium to check off the box. So I think from that standpoint alone, they're excited. But no, I think that Alabama fans have seen Oklahoma during the Saban tenure. You had the Sugar Bowl, which was not one they like to remember, and then obviously you had the Orange Bowl, the Tua versus Kyler Murray shootout. So I think there's respect there. I think there's respect for both of the new teams joining the league, and you got two blue blood programs coming in. It's for an Alabama, it makes things more difficult because there's tougher teams out there, but it makes it difficult for everybody else as well.
The Crimson Tide will be headed to Norman on November 23rd. He is Charlie Porter, senior team writer with Bama Online. And yeah, I think it's going to be fun. We look forward to seeing you here in Norman on November 23rd. We appreciate the time.
Yeah, looking forward to it, you guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Charlie.